Welcome. Today, what I'm going to be wanting to do is take you through a real fun little activity or a process that I've been recently undertaking, especially in today's climate with the inability of travel. Google Earth is a really great opportunity for you to locate different areas around the globe, search for those different compositions, and really have fun exploring and just seeing what you are able to find. So in this video, I'm going to be taking you through the process of using Google Earth in order to capture these scenes. And then I'm going to be taking you through the image that I had recently sourced and venturing into the United Kingdom, into the realm of Wales, to track that down. I'll begin by opening up Google Earth. As you can see here, I've got Google Earth Pro. I'm not sure the difference or whether or not this is just the only version, or it may just be a way of differentiating it from the Google Maps online. I'm not 100% sure. But opening it up, it will take you through to where I would assume you live. So that's my beautiful country, Australia. I actually live on the little island down below there. You can see that as Tasmania. Quite well known around the world as a state of Australia for its beautiful views, majestic. The environments here is just amazing. So what I normally do, and I've sort of been delving into Europe, it's kind of an area of interest and somewhere I'd like to travel one day. So I'm just going through the process of finding a location. Now, I've settled back in Wales again, as this is the location that I actually tracked down in the countryside that I did my recent painting. Now, if you pick up that little orange man who's on the right-hand side, you'll see the blue illumination of all the roads that he has the ability of dropping down into and seeing. So straight off, I've fallen into a nice little country road, a little bit overgrown, so it's definitely summer and beautiful flowers. Now, if you wander down a little bit, down the road, you can see, I think actually is quite a nice little composition of a beautiful tree on a lone road, tree overhanging. You've got the fields either side. And in itself could be quite a nice little composition. Now, zooming out, there is a little button there to exit ground or street view. And you can move around into different locations. You can travel by road if you like. It does take a little bit of time. It actually is quite nice to explore that way. Now, what caught my eye here was the T section. And I wanted to see what was happening there. Now, the Google Earth car, I wonder if he decided to try, maybe I should, or maybe I shouldn't. It's a concealed entrance. Maybe it's someone's property, so he's diverted away. Nothing really telling on this location, so trying again, I've zoomed out of street view, and this time I've decided to try my hand at a streetscape within a town. So generally I'll look for an intersection because you kind of do want the vanishing points. So in this scene here, straight away, dropped it down, and I'm actually really liking what I'm seeing here. What I do now, I will go backwards and forwards. You know what? This streetcars, unfortunately, you just got to kind of stick with what it gives you. It's not always the best when it comes to composition. So going backwards and forwards, what I'll then do is I've got my snip tool actually down the bottom of my taskbar, which you can do when you're using it. You can just drag it down there, or while it's open on the taskbar, right click and pin to taskbar. So I'll take this and I'll save the image. Now, doing this from a corner here allows the perspective element of leading lines and so forth to really be dominant in the picture or painting that you end up doing. Now, what I do, I double click and I open to edit, and I wanted to flip it. Now, obviously, that's going to change a few things, especially the side of the road. And you could argue, is it really representative of the scene that I'm actually trying to capture? No, artistically, I think I was just trying to see which would be better for me. Maybe it's got a bit of the left-sided, right-sided brain sort of element. So what I'm doing now is just playing around with the crop to just to see what other composition that I can come down to. And I think I'm actually quite liking the closed in crop. So actually removing the 2-point perspective the longer 2-point and bringing it right down for the main focal point being the end. This is a scene that I was able to capture using Google Earth just a couple of days ago. Now, what really drew me to this scene was the road that was leading into the distance, turning to the right. I've got that small little dirt road to the right of the road itself, the beautiful stonework in the fencing, as well as the farm gate that led into the open area within the image. Now, we've got the distant tree line, as well as the sky is quite blown out, so I kind of just used a little bit of creative freedom there to create my sky. Now, as you can see, beginning by image, putting down the line work again, just to help guide me as I progress through the painting. I wanted to, or the idea at the beginning was to be quite intricate with the stonework, keeping the rest of the scene very loose. I don't know whether I was fully successful in doing that, but yeah, it is what it is. I pretty much begin by using a cerulean blue to create my sky, a wet and wet. I decided to go with a bit of a clouded scene. Now I'm just putting my initial wash down, so wanting to keep it quite warm as the light that is coming in through the right hand side. Really wanting that to give it a nice glow. With this image, I had essentially oversaturated it, but in the end, I'm actually quite happy with the end result. Now this guy, I overworked it, and as you will see, it ended up being something completely not what I was wanting. The initial wash, I should have really developed and put the darkness in the clouds when I had the page was wet, and then really using brush to get the highlight or the whiteness lifted where I wanted that. So in the end, I kind of nearly just brought up all of my cloud, wet it all down, and went in with a bit of a thicker mixture of now I can't remember if it was Payne's Grey or a combination of French ultramarine and burnt sienna. You can see me just dropping in a little bit of burnt sienna, just give it a bit of colour, some warmth in there. Now, it probably is a bit of a gift that happened. The scene, the focus you really want it to be was on the landscape, not on the sky. So having it as a bit of a muted sky, I think, ended up working okay. Now here I'm just putting in the distant tree line. Now this is probably my second error, which again was fixable. I went in with I did put in a beginning of a bit of a blue hue to the green to give it a bit of coolness, but came out a little bit too strong, and I ended up, you'll see a little bit later, going in and lifting some of that green pigment just from those distant trees, just to give it not so much contrast. Just wanting to extend that down, the base of the trees down, just sort of developing a little bit of a slope within the page, just to connect the height of that back hillside down. It's another area that I think that I might have struggled with this image is around connecting all the different components. That's going to happen if you do paint each section separately from each other. And I've gone in to try and make that back tree line cooler. In the end, again, as I said before, I went in and lifted that. A little bit of splattering, just a little bit of interest in the foreground, midground, I would say. I will utilise that quite a little bit as I progress through this image. Now the light that was coming through my window in the living room here was so strong, I ended up having to close the blinds. So you can see that harsh sunlight hitting the desk. So I've actually had to work with the light that I had available within the room. Quite fortunate that the camera that I utilise, a Nikon D750, has amazing low light capability. And I know that from the images, but I actually haven't really need to look into that, whether or not that translates into video. Now I assume it would, it's the same sense obviously. But if I do need to increase the ISO, it's definitely capable. Now I definitely really wanted to make this left-hand side quite dark. Again, just wanting to help eventually just lead the eye in from dark to light. So having this reasonably dark, I was hoping to achieve that. I just loved how that the stone wall curves from the left and curves around. Wasn't very happy with my choice of how I was going to do that tree. If I was to do this painting again, I would be definitely tackling that right hand tree a little or slightly different. There's probably a chance that you're hearing some sounds in the background. The family's going about their day. I actually did have a second camera directly on my palette, which I was going to have as an alternate screen on the video, but ended up removing that. At least you'll be able to see the mixing. Unfortunately, yeah, it's a bit hard to keep track of the colour. But the main colours that I'm using in this is mainly just the French ultramarine, the burnt sienna, sap green or permanent sap green. That darker green there is the Prussian green. And a little bit of Hansa yellow. Now I'm probably just using a little bit of burnt umber there actually. Now I think I've probably gone in a little bit too dark with that wash just there, as I had to go in a second time. Oh, not really a second time, but then going in and adding in all the real fine details, which you'll see soon. Again, just wanting to keep with that glow that's going to be coming in from that right hand side. I really do need to get a little bit of a better light source. Moving around, casting a shadow from the light behind me. It's a little bit stronger than the light that I have actually focused on the image. Now this image is probably one of my most detailed. Which is tricky because if you're trying to develop, and I'm really wanting to try and develop a loose style, which again, you just want to try and keep every single part of the image as impressionistic as you can to insinuate certain features. Which I feel like I'm slowly getting there. I'm just using my rigger to add in some finer details with branches, and in a little while I'm going to be going back in and completely adding a lot more contrast to that tree. Now I find that if I do a painting, I usually do it over a couple of days, just stopping and starting, or stopping when I feel like that I need a break. And it's just one of those things I just really don't want to. I like coming things to a bit of a fresh mindset, so that way I don't go, I suppose, too far on an idea without the possibility of coming back from it if it didn't turn out to be a very good idea as a result of me just spending too much time and not being able to think clearly. So I'll usually do it over whether it's over a full day or over a couple of days. That can sometimes happen in my paintings. Now, prior to this part, I actually didn't record. I went in with a sharp, actually I think it was a sharp nail, and I tried to do some scratching just to try and bring some highlights into the shadows in different places. Now, I don't know if it's the paper or the sharpness of the nail or my technique, but it just doesn't really want to cooperate, and I probably need to get something a little bit sharper to get those fine white scratches in. As you can see on the left-hand side tree trunk, it's kind of scraped a little bit too much there. So I'm just coming in now, adding in a little bit more contrast to that tree, just trying to even up the composition. Now, this is the point where I suppose implementing the shadows, and that shadow that I'm putting in right there, I might need to go back in at some stage. Now, I did work the other shadow in a little bit more appropriately, but that one I actually did leave, and it looks, the resulting effect has looked like that the pathway of that road is actually part of a hillside. So at some point I might have to go in and just sort of give some definition, or a little bit more definition, to the road or the tyre tracks that lead along it. So I'm just wanting to put in a little bit of darkness on the side of the road, just to really look like a bit of a ditch. One thing that really captured me about that stone wall is the moss and plant life that was growing all over it. Not just along the edge, on the bottom of the road, but actually up and around it. You'll see that develop as the video progresses. Keeping this, that's my Skoda Perla. I absolutely love this brush, and I'm thinking that I might actually get a size 16. This is a size 12, and again, it's got the ability of just holding great amount of water. Its fine tip is great for details. It's probably one of my favourite brushes. Darkening up the grass in the shade or in the shadow, and really wanting to try and put in where the shadow is hitting on that wall. Now, sometimes I'll take a photo with my mobile of the image, and looking at it, it's a really good way of identifying areas within the image that aren't working. I was really happy with how the left-hand side behind the wall turned out. Very simple but effective in what I was trying to convey. So just doing a little bit of splattering here, just wanting to put in actually a couple little bits of artwork, just using the backs of them. I think they were my, if I remember correctly, mountainscape sunsets that I was doing. Oh no, that one was a swatch card. Just whatever I have loose available. So even though I take the tape off, yes, I'm definitely not happy with a few of the features that are left over. So I'll go back in and work in some more darks. Now applying that dark, that green, I can't think of what it was. I think it was just a mix of sap green with a substantial amount of red, just to tone it down quite a lot. So I'm just going in now and just blending it in. Still keeping it very simple, loose. Now usually with my painting videos I'll speed them up quite a lot, but I also understand that it's important to not speed up too quickly, especially if someone's wanting to have a bit of a paint along. It's going to be really tricky to do that, so just wanting to reduce that speed, but it does mean that my videos go for a little bit longer, but that's okay. It's actually a really good process that I'm finding once I've painted, just to go back in and watch what I'm doing as a learning experience, just seeing the different choices that I'm making, the brushes that I'm choosing. I'm regretting creating that really straight line for the shadow across the road. As you know, in nature, you're not going to have those straight lines. So what I'm wanting to do now is really try and insinuate the shadow of the trees and have different patches of light coming through. Just wanting to maintain that nice white border. I'll probably, to do it properly, I should have laid down a little bit of masking tape, because I could have, there's definitely the risk of a run going down there. Now what I'm doing now is just with a damp brush lifting to try and get that straight edge out, and again just get a few areas where the sunlight's coming through, broken up by the leaves and the foliage. What I'm doing now is just sort of finding a location that would suit just signing off on that one. Again, I don't like signing in very obvious places. So what I do now, and you know what, this was a small present to myself a couple of weeks ago, the polychromos. Now I'm not a watercolor purist. I think keeping it to whatever medium you use, keeping it to a minimum, I think go for it. There's definitely some conversations in social media circles around, if it's watercolor, keep it watercolor. We're not posting to this forum. You can't post this forum unless it's 100% watercolor. But I think starting out, you need to try and do what you can to recover some of those details in the dark areas, which is what I've done here. I had originally before this some Derwent artist pencils that I actually got when I was in college, some actually 20 years ago. So they're now my son's, and he can use those, as my wife took them to work in her classroom, and what turned from 72 down to essentially 36, 38. So I decided to, I suppose you could argue, or someone could argue, upgrade slightly to the Faber-Castell polychromos, and I'm blown away with what the drawings that I've done so far. The ability to layer on top of the pencil, wow. I'm quite happy with the darkness of that bottom right hand corner. I was a little bit iffy about it, but I think I did leave that in the end, and very happy with the outcome. Thank you very much for watching.